The rain in Portland was a constant, grumpy drizzle that matched Leo's mood perfectly. He scowled at the reflection in his coffee cup, the steam doing little to cut through the chill that had little to do with the weather. 2 years. It had been 2 years since he'd logged out of Starfall for the last time, leaving behind the callsign Phantom and the legion of fans who still, occasionally, tried to track him down. His tiny apartment was a shrine to his retirement, filled with unopened mail, empty energy drink cans, and the lingering ghost of pixelated victories that felt meaningless now. The knock on his door was firm, entirely out of place in his world of delivery apps and online silence. He ignored it. It came again, more insistent. With a groan, he shuffled to the door and yanked it open, ready to snarl at a lost delivery driver. The words died in his throat. Standing in his dim hallway was a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a constellation. Her skin had a subtle, opalescent sheen, and her hair, the color of spun silver, was tied in an intricate braid that cascaded over one shoulder. She wore a suit of sleek, gray material that seemed to drink the light, and her eyes, a startling shade of violet, held a depth that was distinctly, undeniably alien. Behind her stood two stern-looking individuals in military uniforms, their postures rigid. Leonard Cross. Her voice was melodic, each syllable perfectly formed, and it sent an unwelcome shiver down his spine. "Who's asking?" he grumbled, crossing his arms. "And it's Leo. My name is Kellen," she said, offering a small, formal nod. "I am an emissary of the Stellan Federation. We require your assistance. May we come in?" "No," Leo said flatly, starting to close the door. One of the military men put a foot in the way. "Look, I don't care what you're selling. Interstellar timeshares, whatever. I'm not interested. This is not a negotiation," the soldier said, his voice a low growl. Kellen placed a gentle hand on the soldier's arm, and he surprisingly relaxed. "Please, Leo, what I have to say concerns the future of your entire world. And mine." There was a raw sincerity in her violet eyes that gave him pause. It was the first hint of something real beneath the otherworldly grace. With a sigh of profound annoyance, he stepped back and let them into his messy sanctuary. They crowded his small living space. Kellen remained standing, her gaze briefly flickering over the Starfall Championship trophy he used as a doorstop. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. 3 days ago, Kellen began. "A warship from the Cathar Imperium entered your solar system. They are a warrior culture who expand their empire through a ritual they call the Galactic Hunt. They have challenged Earth, so send the Army, the Air Force." "Why are you in my apartment?" Leo asked, slouching onto his worn sofa. "Because their hunt is not a conventional war," she explained patiently. "It is a series of 3 challenges, governed by ancient, rigid rules. The battles take place in neutral zones and are based on strategy, tracking, and combat in specific, often treacherous environments. To refuse is to invite orbital bombardment." Leo felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, but he kept his face a mask of bored indifference. "Still not seeing my role in this. Our analysts," the other soldier said, holding up a tablet, "intercepted the Cathar challenge data. The parameters, the physics, the tactical simulations. They are a 94% match for the core mechanics of the virtual reality game Starfall." The air left Leo's lungs. He stared at the tablet, where wireframe models of Cathar skirmishes overlapped perfectly with Starfall's gameplay maps. "You are Leonard Cross," Kellen said softly. "For 3 consecutive years, you were the undisputed world champion. Known by the callsign Phantom, your strategies are still studied. By our assessment, you are the single most qualified individual on this planet to lead Earth's defense in the Galactic Hunt." A bitter laugh escaped him. That was a game. This is insane. I'm not a soldier. I'm a dropout who was good at pressing buttons. The Cathar do not see the distinction." Kellen replied. "In their eyes, mastery of the form is everything. And you have mastered it." She took a step closer, and he could smell a faint scent like ozone and starlight. "My people, the Stellan Federation, are a peaceful race. The Cathar see our pacifism as weakness. If Earth falls, we are next. I am not just here to recruit you for Earth, Leo. I am here to beg for your help to save my home as well." Her composure cracked for a single, heartbreaking second. He saw the weight of worlds in her eyes, a fear she was bravely holding back. It was the most real thing he'd witnessed in years. He looked away, toward the window and the endless gray rain. His quiet, grumpy existence was being ripped away. He wanted to say no, to throw them out and go back to his coffee and his solitude. "What's in it for me?" he finally muttered, the words tasting sour. "Besides the continued existence of human civilization?" The first soldier said dryly. Kelly and ignored him, her focus entirely on Leo. "A purpose," she said simply, "and my gratitude, which, I assure you, is not given lightly." He looked at her then, really looked at her. Past the alien beauty and the diplomatic poise, he saw a fierce intelligence and a will of forged steel. She was nothing like the screaming fans or the corporate sponsors he'd grown to despise. She was a person, fighting for her life, with a groan that came from the very depths of his soul. He stood up. "Fine, whatever, but I'm not wearing a uniform, and I want a lifetime supply of those terrible military ration brownies, the ones with the fake chocolate." A genuine, relieved smile broke through Kellen's serene mask, and it was like watching a sunrise on a planet he'd never seen. "That can be arranged," as they led him out of his apartment and into a waiting military vehicle. Leo felt the walls of his small world crumbling away. He was being drafted to save humanity by a beautiful alien because he was good at a video game. It was the stupidest, most terrifying thing he could imagine. And as he stole a glance at Kellen, who sat beside him with a new hope in her luminous eyes, he had the sinking, thrilling feeling that his grumpy, isolated life was over for good. The facility was a sterile, humming labyrinth of concrete and steel, buried deep beneath a mountain. To Leo, it felt like a prison, the air thick with the scent of ozone and anxiety. He'd been given a Spartan room, a stack of data slates detailing the Cathar, and a growing sense of impending doom. He spent the first 24 hours ignoring everyone, playing a simple puzzle game on his phone with a ferocious intensity that was really just a mask for his terror. Kellyanne, however, was a constant, patient presence. She didn't push, didn't demand. She simply appeared, bringing him meals, quietly leaving updated files, or just standing in the doorway of the training simulation room, observing him with those unnervingly perceptive violet eyes. "The first challenge has been declared," she said on the third morning, her voice cutting through the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of his phone game. "It is the Sky Razor Run, a race through the shards of the broken moon, Lyra." Leo didn't look up. "Sounds like the Crystal Scar level from Starfall. The one with the shifting energy currents. It is nearly identical," Kellen confirmed, a note of surprise in her voice. "You remember? I remember everything about that game," he muttered, finally setting his phone down. "It's why I quit. It stopped being fun and started being an obsession, a compulsion. I didn't like the person I became to stay on top." It was the most he'd volunteered about himself since arriving. Kellen moved into the room, her movements graceful and silent. "What was he like?" "The person you became." "Cold," Leo said, his gaze distant. "Calculating. I saw people as variables, obstacles. I burned bridges with friends, my team. It was just me and the leaderboards. And for what? A digital trophy and a username that's now a curse." He gestured around the sterile room. "This, I understand the weight of a title," Kellen said softly, leaning against a console. "As the youngest emissary in my family's line, I am expected to be flawless, to be the perfect blend of logic and grace, to never show fear or doubt. It is a different kind of isolation." He looked at her then, truly seeing the faint tension around her eyes, the way her shoulders were set just a little too straight. She wasn't just a serene alien diplomat. She was a young woman carrying the fate of her people, putting on a brave face for a grumpy human she barely knew. The realization was a crack in the wall of his cynicism. "Show me the course," he said, his voice rough. In the high-fidelity simulation chamber, the shards of the broken moon materialized around them. Jagged purple crystal formations floated in the void, glowing with dangerous, unpredictable energy surges. The path was a twisting, treacherous gauntlet. "Your vessel will be a modified scout ship," Kellen explained, her image projected beside him in the cockpit. "The Cathar racer will be faster, more heavily shielded. Their pilot, A veteran named Vorlik has 17 hunt victories. Speed and armor don't win the crystal scar, Leo said, his hands instinctively curling around phantom controls. It's about rhythm. You have to feel the current shifts, not just see them. You have to cut the engines and drift through the narrow passes, using the energy waves as a slingshot. It's a dance. He initiated the simulation. The ship lurched forward. For the first hour, he was rusty, clipping crystals, overcorrecting. His frustration a tangible force in the cockpit. Cullen watched, offering no advice, just silent support. On the fifth run, something clicked. His movements became fluid, intuitive. He stopped fighting the simulation and started flowing with it, his ship weaving through the deadly ballet of crystal and light with an almost reckless grace. He finished the run with a new record, his heart hammering not from fear, but from the old, forgotten thrill of mastery. He emerged from the simulator drenched in sweat, a triumphant grin threatening to break through his usual scowl. Cullen was waiting, a real, unguarded smile on her face. That was breathtaking. You moved like a Stellan photon sailor in the solar winds. The compliment, so genuine and specific, warmed him more than he wanted to admit. It's just patterns. You learn the patterns, and you can predict anything. Is that how you see the universe? As a series of patterns to be decoded? She asked as they walked back to the debriefing room, isn't it? He countered, my people believe the universe is a song. Patterns, yes, but also harmony, discord, and beauty in the chaos. We do not seek to conquer the song, but to find our place within it. He glanced at her, at the way the light caught the silver in her hair. Sounds nicer than my way. Later that night, he found her in the observation deck, staring at a star chart of the upcoming race route. She looked tired, the weight of the world of worlds finally bowing her shoulders. You're scared, he stated, not as an accusation, but a simple fact. She didn't deny it. If you fail, my world becomes the next hunting ground. My sister, she is a musician. She composes the harmonies for our dawn ceremonies. She has never held a weapon. The thought of the Cathar touching our world, touching her. Her voice trembled, and she cut herself off, visibly rebuilding her diplomatic composure. In that moment, she wasn't an emissary. She was Kellen, a sister, terrified for her family. Leo felt a strange, protective urge rise within him, an impulse that had nothing to do with saving humanity, and everything to do with the woman in front of him. I won't fail, he said, the words coming out with a conviction that surprised them both. She turned to him, her violet eyes shimmering in the dim light. Why? Because of the brownies? A real, genuine laugh escaped Leo, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in years. No, not because of the brownies. Their eyes held, and the space between them seemed to crackle with a new, unspoken understanding. The grumpy champion and the graceful emissary were gone, replaced simply by Leo and Kellen. He saw the hope and fear warring in her gaze, and she saw the dormant strength and empathy awakening in his. He didn't know what to say next. The moment was too big, too fragile, so he just gave a small, awkward nod and turned to leave. Leo, she called out softly. He paused at the door. Thank you for not just seeing the patterns. As he walked back to his room, the sterile corridors felt less like a prison. The upcoming race still terrified him. The fate of worlds still weighed on him. But for the first time, there was a new feeling mixed in a reason to fight that was personal, warm, and had violet eyes. He wasn't just fighting for a planet anymore. He was fighting for a promise he'd just made to her. The silence in the observation deck was a stark contrast to the roaring tension of the Skyraiser run. Leo had done it. He'd won, not by brute force, but by using a Cathar energy surge as a slingshot in the final stretch, a move he'd dubbed the Phantom Drift. The victory was plastered across every screen on Earth. But down in the bunker, the celebration was muted. There was no time. The second challenge was already upon them. It's called the Viridian Labyrinth. A new voice announced, sharp and familiar. A young woman with fiery red hair tied in a messy bun and wearing a lab coat over a faded band t-shirt strode into the room. Anya Sharma, Leo's former second-in-command from his Starfall days, and the only person who had ever come close to beating him. Anya. Leo blinked, a genuine smile breaking through his exhaustion. What are you doing here? Saving your butt, apparently, she said, punching his arm lightly. They pulled me from my xenobotany post at Caltech. Seems the next challenge is less about flying and more about, well, my thing. She tossed a data slate onto the table. Images of a dense, bioluminescent jungle flickered to life. It's a planetoid, a massive artificial ecosystem. The objective is to retrieve the heart bloom, a flower that only blooms under a specific subsonic harmonic frequency. Leo groaned. Great, a fetch quest, not just any fetch quest, Anya corrected, her eyes alight with scientific fervor. The flora is sentient, aggressive, and the Cathar have sent their own specialist. We need to get our hands dirty. As if on cue, the door hissed open again. This time, a Cathar entered. But he was different. He wore no battle armor, only simple, rugged garments of a dark, woven material. His build was leaner than the hulking warriors they'd seen, and his eyes, a deep amber, held a weary intelligence rather than predatory glee. He moved with a quiet grace that was almost stellan. This is Rorik, Kellen introduced, her tone carefully neutral. He disagrees with his people's methods. He was a master ecologist before the hunt culture consumed our society. He has agreed to guide you through the labyrinth. Rico gave a short, stiff nod, his gaze sweeping over the humans with clear skepticism before settling on Anya, who was staring at him with unabashed curiosity. An ecologist, Anya said, stepping closer. So you know this garden isn't natural. The symbiotic relationships are too perfect. It's engineered. A flicker of surprise crossed Rorik's stern features. You perceive this? Most see only monsters. I see a system, Anya countered, a challenge in her voice. And every system has a logic. The initial journey into the Viridian labyrinth was a tense, silent affair. The air was thick with the scent of alien pollen and damp earth. Giant, pulsing mushrooms cast an eerie blue glow, and vines coiled and uncoiled with a life of their own. Leo and Kellen took point, while Anya and Rorik followed, a palpable friction between them. The heartbloom is deep within the central grove, Rorik stated, his voice a low rumble. The path is guarded by the whisper vines. They are attracted to noise. Silence is your only shield. They moved on, Anya meticulously taking samples and muttering into her recorder, when a vine suddenly lashed out towards Kellen. It was Rorik who moved with startling speed, slicing it cleanly with a small, curved blade. I thought you were an ecologist, Leo said, his hand on his own energy pistol. To understand a predator, you must also know how to kill it, Rorik replied grimly. It is a truth my people have forgotten in their thirst for glory. The tension broke when they reached a chasm spanned by a bridge of intertwined, glowing roots. As Leo stepped onto it, the roots began to writhe, threatening to pull apart. Stop, Anya commanded. She wasn't looking at the bridge, but at a large, orchid-like flower nearby, which was emitting a faint, pulsing hum. It's not the bridge, it's the sentinel flower. It perceives our weight as a threat. She turned to Rorik. Your people use sonic weapons. Can you generate a frequency to pacify it? A C-sharp, I think. Rico looked stunned. You can identify the harmonic by ear? It's not that different from calming an agitated plant back home, Anya shrugged, though a proud smile played on her lips. Science is science. With a nod, Rorik produced a small device and adjusted the dial. A low, resonant C-sharp note filled the air. The sentinel flower immediately stilled, its petals relaxing, and the root bridge solidified. They crossed without incident. As they pressed deeper, the dynamic shifted. Anya's brilliant deductions and Rorik's innate understanding of the ecosystem began to weave together. He would point out a nearly invisible spore trapper. She would calculate the exact atmospheric pressure that triggered it. They were no longer a human and a Cathar, but to scientists speaking the universal language of logic and observation. Why did you leave them? Anya asked during a brief rest, her voice softer now. The hunt was once sacred, Rorik said, staring into the glowing forest. A test of will against the universe. Now it is mere conquest, a butcher's game. I could not watch my culture become a shadow of itself. I would rather be a traitor to my people than to their soul. Anya watched him, the stern set of his jaw, the sorrow in his amber eyes, and saw not an alien, but a kindred spirit, someone else who loved something that was being destroyed. Finally, they reached the central grove. In the center stood the heartbloom, a magnificent, pulsating flower of deep crimson. Its petals closed tight. The air thrummed with a discordant, subsonic frequency that set their teeth on edge. "The frequency is wrong," Anya said, checking her scanner. "It's keeping the bloom shut. We need to counter it." "My device is not powerful enough," Rorik said, frustration in his voice. Leo looked at Kellen. "Your people, the song of the universe. Can you harmonize with it?" Kellen's eyes widened. Then she nodded, a look of fierce determination on her face. She closed her eyes and began to hum. It was a low, pure note that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. It was a melody of starlight and silence, a counterpoint to the grove's harsh drone dot. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the heartbloom's petals began to quiver. As Kellen's song grew in confidence, the flower responded, unfurling in a breathtaking display of light and color. The discordant hum faded, replaced by a peaceful, resonant harmony. Anya quickly moved forward and carefully harvested the blossom. As she did, she glanced at Rorik. "We did it." He gave a slow, deliberate nod, his gaze holding hers. "We did." In that single word was a world of respect and a bond forged in the heart of an alien jungle. As they made their way back, the two couples walked side by side. Leo and Kellen, their connection now a quiet, steady flame. And Anya and Rorik, their partnership a new, unexpected alliance, built on a foundation of mutual intellect and a shared love for the patterns of life itself. They had retrieved the heartbloom, but they had also found something far more fragile and just as valuable in the treacherous garden.